Right now, one of the world's largest untapped resource economies may be opening to investors for the first time in decades. We're talking about a country sitting on the largest proven oil reserves on Earth, massive deposits of gold, diamonds, and rare earth minerals, and a mining region estimated to hold trillions of dollars in resources. For years, this country was considered completely uninvestable. Political chaos, economic collapse, sanctions, and one of the worst hyperinflation crises in modern history. But suddenly, the situation may be changing. Sanctions are shifting, foreign companies are starting to return or look to return, and investors are quietly beginning to ask a question most people haven't even considered yet. Could Venezuela be entering the early stages of one of the biggest resource investment opportunities of the next decade? But before we dive in, if you're new here, hello, I'm Theodora from The Passport Investor. On this channel, we break down global wealth strategies, investment migration opportunities, second residencies and citizenships, and the geopolitical shifts that shape where smart entrepreneurs and investors move their money and their lives. If you're globally minded and interested in where the world is heading financially and geopolitically, you're in the right place. So let's get back to the big question. Why are some investors suddenly starting to look at Venezuela again after decades of crisis? And more importantly, could this country become one of the most unexpected resource opportunities of the next decade? To understand that, we need to step back and look at the bigger picture, because when globally minded investors evaluate opportunities, they rarely look only at the present moment. They look at transitions. The moments when countries move from chaos to reform, from isolation to reintegration, from economic collapse to rebuilding. Those moments can be extremely risky, but historically they are also when some of the largest investment opportunities appear. Venezuela may be approaching one of those moments. For more than 2 decades, Venezuela has been defined by economic collapse and political instability. Despite of sitting on extraordinary natural wealth, the country's economy deteriorated rapidly. Oil production fell dramatically. Foreign investment disappeared. Infrastructure collapsed and millions of citizens fled the country in search of opportunity elsewhere. In fact, more than 7 million Venezuelans have emigrated since 2015, creating one of the largest migration crises in modern history. At the same time, corruption and political mismanagement crippled the country's industries. Venezuela went from being one of the wealthiest countries in Latin America to experiencing hyperinflation so severe that prices doubled within weeks. So global investors, the conclusion for them was obvious: stay away. But recently, something interesting has begun to change. We saw it in the news. The geopolitical landscape surrounding Venezuela is shifting. Certain international pressures are evolving, and discussions about sanctions have started to change. And new economic policies inside the country have begun opening key industries to foreign participation. Energy companies are exploring opportunities to return. Mining reforms are being discussed, and international investors are starting to evaluate the long-term potential of the country's enormous natural resources, because Venezuela is not just another struggling economy. It is a country sitting on extraordinary strategic wealth. Venezuela holds roughly 303 billion barrels of proven oil reserves, the largest in the world. That alone makes the country incredibly important in the global energy landscape. But oil is only part of the story. Venezuela also contains enormous deposits of gold, diamond, iron, and minerals essential for modern electronics and advanced technologies. One of the most resource-rich areas in the country is the Orinoco mining arc, a region covering more than 100,000 square kilometers and believed to contain massive quantities of gold and other minerals. Some estimates suggest the region could hold trillions of dollars in potential resource value if developed properly. Now, imagine you're a global investor or mining company evaluating this situation. For years, Venezuela was completely off limits. Political instability made investment impossible. Contracts were unreliable, sanctions created enormous legal and financial barriers. But now, imagine the environment begins to change slowly. Reforms start opening the energy and mining sectors. Foreign companies can negotiate on long-term concessions. International arbitration protections begin to appear. Suddenly, a country that was completely inaccessible starts to look like an early-stage frontier opportunity. Risky, yes, but potentially extremely rewarding for investors willing to move early. And this is exactly why some global investors are starting to watch Venezuela again, because history shows that the early stages of economic reopening often create the largest investment returns. But this story is not just about Venezuela, it's part of a much bigger global shift happening right now. Around the world, governments are competing for control of the resources that will power the next generation of technology. Oil and natural gas still dominate global energy systems, but demand for strategic minerals, lithium, copper, rare earth elements, and other is rapidly increasing as the world builds electronic vehicles, renewable energy systems, and advanced digital infrastructure. Countries with large natural resource reserves suddenly become strategically important again, and Venezuela sits right in the middle of that equation. Its oil reserves alone make it one of the most resource-rich countries on the planet. Add to that enormous mineral deposits, agricultural land, and a relatively small population, and you start to see why global investors pay attention whenever the country shows signs of economic reopening. Of course, none of this means Venezuela is suddenly a safe investment environment. Far from it. The risk remains enormous. Political uncertainty is still high, infrastructure has been severely damaged over the years with neglect, the country's financial system remains fragile, and corruption continues to be a major challenge. These factors make Venezuela one of the highest risk environments in the global investment landscape. But paradoxically, that is also exactly why certain types of investors become interested. Frontier market investors specialize in high-risk, high-potential transitions. They look for countries where political or economic reforms could unlock enormous resource value over time. And if Venezuela gradually stabilizes, several major opportunities could emerge. The first is energy. Restoring Venezuela's oil production would require tens of billions of dollars in investment in drilling, in refining pipelines, and export infrastructure. That means potential opportunities for energy companies, engineering firms, and infrastructure investors. The second opportunity is mining. With massive gold deposits and other critical minerals, Venezuela could become a significant mining region if proper investment and regulatory frameworks are established. The third opportunity is natural gas. Venezuela has substantial offshore gas reserves that could supply regional energy markets in Latin America and the Caribbean. The fourth opportunity lies in infrastructure. After years of economic decline, nearly every part of the country's infrastructure will require rebuilding. Power grids, roads, ports, refineries, and telecommunication networks. And finally, there could eventually be opportunities in real estate and private business development if economic stability gradually returns to major cities like Caracas. But there is one critical mistake investors must avoid when evaluating situations like this. Assuming that political change automatically creates safe investment environments. It does not. Economic recovery in countries like Venezuela can take years, sometimes even decades. Institutional reform takes time. Legal frameworks must be rebuilt, and investor confidence is slow to return after long periods of instability. That means only the most experienced emerging market investors are likely to move early. Most global capital will wait until reform proves durability and political stability improves, which brings us to the most important question of all. What could Venezuela look like over the next 10 years? In the most optimistic scenario, the country gradually stabilizes, energy production increases, foreign investment returns, and millions of Venezuelans who left the country may eventually come back. Infrastructure begins to be rebuilt, and Venezuela slowly reemerges as one of Latin America's major resource economies. In that scenario, the early investors who entered during the transition period could benefit enormously. But there is also a less optimistic scenario. Political instability could continue, reforms could stall, corruption could undermine economic rebuilding efforts, and the country could remain locked in economic stagnation for years. In other words, Venezuela represents both enormous opportunity and enormous uncertainty at the same time. But for globally minded investors who study geopolitical transitions, these are exactly the types of situations that deserve attention. Because when countries move from isolation to reintegration in the global economy, the transformation can be dramatic. And the investors who understand those shifts early are often the ones who see the opportunities before the rest of the world notices. So the real takeaway is this: Venezuela today is still one of the most complex and high-risk environments in the global investment landscape. But it is also a country with extraordinary natural wealth and the potential for long-term transformation if reforms continue. Whether that transformation ultimately succeeds or fails will depend on political stability, economic policy, and international corporations in the years ahead. But one thing is certain: if Venezuela begins rebuilding its economy and opening its industries, global investors will be watching very closely. And if you're interested in understanding how global wealth moves, how investors evaluate geopolitical opportunities, and which countries may shape the next decade of economic growth, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Here at The Passport Investor, we regularly break down the country's global strategies and geopolitical shifts that entrepreneurs and internationally mobile investors should be paying attention to. You can also check out our other videos where we explore second residency opportunities, emerging investment destinations, and the strategies global citizens use to diversify their wealth and their lives internationally. And if you're serious about building your own international strategy, whether that's a second residency, citizenship, or a global diversification plan, you can book a strategy call with our team at The Passport Investor. The link is in the description below. And if you'd like deeper insights and discussions around global wealth strategies and investment migration, you can also join our community where we shape opportunities and ideas most people never hear about. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.